there, folks. Happy holidays. Hunter Pence, Daron, Sutton, thanks for hanging out with us on Perfect Game College Baseball. Let's just put our two guests together, Hunter, because it's fun. You have Rick Heller, the head coach at Iowa. There's so many great stories there. But on his coaching tree is Dan Heefner, who, over 2 decades basically has dominated as well at Dallas Baptist. They started together. They're in separate places, 2 great coaches and 2 great leaders of young men.
Yeah, this is 2 extraordinary programs, 2 extraordinary developers, and kind of schools. When you think of baseball, it's going to take a great mind at the top to create the programs that they are. So let's dive into, what makes them so successful. What are the principles, and learn a little bit about Iowa and DBU. DBU, obviously, being the Texas native that I am, I respect the heck of it. It's the fundamentally sound baseball, and they keep making the playoffs year in and year out.
Yeah, the one great thing that he said, and then we'll get this started, is we don't think of mid-major status. We think of top 25. That's the conference we play in. That sums it up. Let's get to the show. Hunter and I hanging out with you and 2 great coaches on Perfect Game College Baseball. We all feel happy in the holidays when we get together with family, right? And in this case, it's baseball family. We've been knowing Dan Heefner and his leadership for a long, long time. And Hunter, with his Texas roots, certainly can plug in too as Heef spends time with us now. Coach Heefner, happy holidays, my friend. Thanks for spending time with us. We really appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you. I'm looking forward to it.
In a home with so many boys that, some have gone off to college that are becoming men. One of them plays for you and your son, Luke. What do the holidays look like? What does Christmas Day look like in the Heefner house?
Obviously changing as they get a little bit older, but 5 boys. The youngest one's 8, so we still get the fun and the excitement with him. And then, but it's fun having everybody back home. And just got a pickleball net the other day, so that's how they're spending all their time, and it's getting pretty competitive. So I'm a little sore today, actually.
Dan, I'm not surprised. Pickleball can definitely get. I'm all about the pickleball, and it can get the competitive juices flowing. Glad to hear you're sore with that as well. I gotta ask, Dan. When I think of DBU, growing up in the Dallas-Fort Worth area, you just built such an amazing program. But I think of fundamental baseball. I think of good pitchability. You have a lot of arms that have some velocity, but I just want to dive into a little bit of what are some of the key principles to creating such a good, fundamentally sound team year in and year out?
Yeah, that's a great question. And definitely remember when you were over at UTA, and it was always fun watching you play. But, I think our big thing is, you nailed it. And that's, makes us feel pretty good that that's what you've noticed about the program is we really focus on development and, want to maximize each player. And one thing with that is, we try to maximize each guy's strength. So trying to figure out, like you mentioned pitching. On the pitching side, it's like, okay, what makes this guy unique? What does he do that's special? How does his body move? What's best for him? But I think more importantly, and the thing we've been learning the most in recent years is how to maximize his pitches and, what does he do with the baseball that's unique and different than normal? And then just maximize that and let them kind of specialize and do their thing. So if it's a guy with the ride fastball, we're going to maximize that and let him throw it where it's going to play best. And, finding his best breaking ball, finding the pitches that are going to tunnel the best and feed off of each other. And, not so much of trying to get a pitcher to be able to do 5, 6 different things. What are the 2 to 3 things that you can really master and do well that are just natural for you?
Yeah, Dan, I think that is a remarkable way of looking at things. A lot of people would say, when I was coming up, work on your weaknesses. And there's been kind of a tune that I've noticed from these opportunities. And I think that's just like really good, important for people to realize is like, what are you good at? And let's master that and trust it. The Rays, I thought, were one of the big league teams that are doing that great. So it doesn't surprise me that you're taking advantage of what each kid has. And it's pretty wild to me because I never thought of that coming up. So thanks for sharing that, Dan. You mentioned about this team. You said we have a team that's ready to overachieve, and it's kind of a younger squad. Can you talk a little bit about why you think this team is ready to overachieve? And I know from the outside looking in, we always expect DBU because of what you've been able to do to be great. But why does this team ready to overachieve?
Yeah, I think, the reason we feel that way about this team is just it's the makeup of the team. It's the type of guys we have. It's the work ethic we saw this fall. I mean, to me, what does it take to overachieve? It takes tremendous work ethic, but it also takes just a great team mentality. When you have great team chemistry, we hear it every single year, every sport. You look at the team who's playing at the very end of the year, and what was the key to you guys being successful? They're going to say something about how close they were together. The adversity that they were able to fight through because they were a team and because they were together. And that was something we were really impressed with this group is, in a very short amount of time, like they just really gelled together and the work ethic was tremendous. And, I think that's a benefit of being at a place for a long time. You can kind of look back and compare to past teams that we've had, and just seeing the teams we've had that have overachieved and really done some special things. I think they had those two traits where it was, they love to work. So it's not grinding just for grinding's sake. It's like they're here because they want to be here. And this is what's enjoyable for them, is to hang out at the field at night and late after practice. And guys are here early and then they're done with that and they go and they eat dinner together and then they hang out and then they're playing ping pong. And it's just like they're just together all the time, working, playing baseball, talking baseball, enjoying each other. So those are things that make us pretty hopeful about the season.
It's interesting. We got to know Luke personally, Luke Heefner, who's obviously one of your key players. And last year we saw him have about an 850 OPS, swipe 12 bags for you, and do what he does defensively. Since last year, how have you seen him evolve as a baseball player? We'll stay away from the human side, maybe later get into that, but be coach for me and tell me how Luke has evolved as a baseball player.
Yeah, I think, like any player, as a freshman, you try to prepare him as best as possible, but you just got to get out there and do it. And you're going to learn things as you play. And I thought really saw him learn and develop as the season went on. And then summer ball is huge. I think that's, we've just seen that through the years, how guys mature and develop when they go off and they're on their own. And, love getting to work with our players every single day and helping them with their swing and that stuff. But when they go off and they got to do it on their own for that, 2 to 3 months in the summer, I just see guys grow up so much. And I saw that with Luke as well. And, it's also baseball it's a tough game. And sometimes you got to bump your toe a little bit, and that also matures you. So just seeing that, through his freshman season, through the summer, that's probably the biggest improvement I've seen, is just a maturity and an ownership over his own swing and his own game, and just starting to see him learn what does he need to do to be successful and take ownership over his own development. And, as a coach, you always want to be there for him and support him. But I think as players get older, they become their own best coach. And I think that's probably the biggest development I've seen in him this last year.
It's funny because we talk about the Cape and its importance. We talk about USA baseball, and that's kind of living at the high level. That's like the high school player that's the PG All-American. But then there's all the other places to play summer ball, right? And you struck a chord for me as an older player. Hunter, I'm sure, feels the same way. Like, I did my most growing in the summertime. With all due respect to QV Lowe, who won 1,000 games, my college coach, I grew so much in the summertime. Like you said, you're on your own, you're feeling on, you have some random job doing something you never thought you'd do. But summer is really a big impact for athletes, probably especially at the mid-major level.
Oh, for sure. But Hunter, where did you play in high school or in college in the summer?
I went to Liberal, Kansas, and Schenectady, New York, and it 100% is the ultimate separator. Because there's a lot of guys that don't really want to be there, and I was like in freaking hog heaven. I was like, baseball every day, let's go.
Hunter, Liberal BJs, right?
Liberal BJs, yes, indeed.
We share that in common. That's the only thing our baseball career shares in common with the Hall of Fame caliber career you had. That's the only thing, was that I stayed with the Carlisle family and played for the Liberal BJs. That's all I got.
That's amazing. It's good memories, that summer ball, huh, Dan?
Oh yeah, and just the development and just the everyday. College baseball it's a long season, but we're playing 4 games a week. It's Tuesday, and then, you got your 2 practices, and then it's a weekend series, where I think that's a huge part of their development as well, is just to learn how to get yourself ready to play every single day and to do it for, what these summer leagues are like now. Like they're good crowds and they're making money. So they're going to use every day they can get to have a gate. So you're playing every day. And if it's an off day, that's pretty rare. So I think that's another big thing we've seen in how players develop in their maturity and work capacity. I think that's a big thing I've seen when a freshman player, a lot of times we're trying to recruit the hardest workers and guys who have that. But I think it's like anything, you can develop it. And, they're with us for a year, and then they go out and they do that, play all summer long, playing every single day, and just see them come back and like that work capacity grow, and they're able to, focus and, to be able to do it for a long period of time in a given day, but then to be able to come back and do it day after day after day. I think that's another area of development we've seen as guys go out and play summer ball.
Dan, I want to kind of add on to this because you mentioned something that I thought was really cool about summer ball is that you teach players to become their own best coach. And a lot of times when you go off to summer ball, you're hearing from kids from all these different schools and different thought programs, which back in my day, there was no internet and there was no social media where you could get the information from the greatest minds in baseball. So there was a lot of secrets back then. There's a lot more information out there, almost information overload. But I still think just hearing from a different point of view can kind of reset you, and maybe one thing works and obviously the practice. But how do you, because I even look at like DBU as a whole and like in the professional ranks, and this is a reason, like if you're a parent, you would want to send a kid to DBU, is that they keep having success because you instill work ethic, you recruit the work ethic guys and teaching them how to be their own coach. So how exactly is it that you get that message across and you create that environment and culture?
Oh, it's something we talk about all the time with our guys. Like for them to maximize their development, there's kind of the two extremes. One is just leave them on their own, figure it out, and you do your own thing. The other is you do whatever we tell you to do. And we think the best is when we meet in the middle. Use our experience, use our knowledge, use all those things, but you're the one who feels it. And you've got to tell us what you're feeling, what you've done before, what feels right, what works. We're going to give you our opinion. And then it's just that everyday conversation and getting to know each other. And when we combine together, that's when we're going to, I feel like, maximize our potential. But I think in order to do that, we have to give them the autonomy too, to ask them those questions and to let them have opinions, and to, sometimes it's going to be different than maybe what I think, but I'm going to let them do that. And then let's see how it works. If it doesn't work, then I'm going to come in and, hey, why don't you give this a try? But to me, that's the fun part of coaching as well. Like that's how you get to really develop a relationship with your players, is when, it's that give and take. It's asking them questions and they're asking you questions. And, another one I think is really fun is I'm going to say it in the way that they say it. So instead of, the way I say something about the swing, I'm going to ask them, hey, what did that feel like? Okay, how did they describe it? And now I'm going to keep note of that. And now every time I refer back to it, I want to refer to it in their language. So, but again, that's the fun part. And again, just trying to get them to understand themselves and become their own best coach, because we're not there with them all the time. And then also think about in game. Like we want our guys to be able to make in-game adjustments, in the batter's box. Well, they've got to be able to feel it and know how to make those adjustments. And hopefully we've let them do that in practice so that they can make them in game and not be relying on us as coaches all the time.
Yeah, that's so much knowledge you just hit right there. Like I could just see the experience of coaching, because that's one of the greatest challenges, because every player is going to hear things different. Language gets confusing, and it's like, what does this player want to hear? And the greatest teacher teaches the student to become his own teacher. Like absolute mastery, Dan. What a beautiful, beautiful way of putting that. I'm gonna circle back a little bit here and talk about this offense that you got going this year. Like what you talked about, pass the baton and kind of that mentality. And granted, each one of the players is going to be a different, unique player. There's going to be some power guys. There's going to be you had a lot of homers last year, and you say doubles, but 3 guys in double digits. Talk a little bit about this offense, how it's shaping up, and what you're excited about.
Yeah, I think it's got a chance to be another pretty good offense. You nailed it. We want to have balance. We feel like we've got a guy at the top who's just a natural leadoff hitter. Like he's going to see 5-6 pitches at a bat. We don't have to tell him to do it. There's going to be no take sign or anything like that. And again, it's just trying to maximize strength. So we try to do that in a lineup as well. Of, however a guy naturally hits, we want to put him in those type of slots. So, we've got a guy that we think fits really well in a leadoff spot. He's just going to work an at bat, see pitches, but he's a great hitter too. Like he's got pop. Tom Poole hit 23 home runs in JUCO last summer or last year. And then, like you said, we've got some guys that do have pop that are home run type guys. We got a couple switch hitters. But to me, what makes a great offense is that thing you said, the pass the baton, where it's just good at bat after good at bat after good at bat. And, what's a good at bat? It's swinging at strikes and taking balls and having an understanding for situations. And there's different times to do different things. And, the game is going to demand, there's times where it is, we're looking for pitch in our hot zone and we're trying to hit a double. There's other times where, just hitting behind the runner, or the runner's on third base and the infield's back, and maybe, you're the best hitter on our team, but all we need is a ground ball up the middle to score a run here and chip away at this, and a run here, a run there. And eventually that leads to the big inning later on. But that's what I like. Again, it goes back to what we talked about at the very beginning, kind of a team with great work ethic, but a selfless team. And I think that's how you have a great offense too, is when the guys truly are selfless, they care about each other, and they're just willing to do what's best for the team, what's the best thing for this inning, compared to just maybe, what I want to do in a certain situation. And I've just learned, like, what's best for the team always ends up being best for the individual as well. But, to me, that's what makes a great offense, is when it's 9 guys that are all thinking through an at bat and competing together, and then passing that information on to each other as well. Like, I think, again, going back to the idea of being your own best coach, that if they're involved in a game plan and coming up with how are we going to attack this pitcher, then they're going to be talking to each other constantly as well. Like, after the at bat, hey, it's got a little more hop than I thought it did. Like, make sure you stay over this a little bit more. Breaking ball, it's a good pitch to hit. I know we were just going to spit on it, but it's not doing much today. If he leaves that thing up, you go for it. To me, those are all the things that make a great offense, is when you start seeing guys talking together, thinking through it, and just really trying to, how do they simplify an at bat, and then just guy after guy doing that, and you can get it rolling pretty good then.
Heath, in your bio, there's a great note about you guys since 2015 having more than 300 wins. You're like a top 10 program as it pertains to wins. And there's a couple of ways I love looking at it. Number one, the mid-majors that are on that list, you guys, ECU and Southern Miss, that's one way. But the other part of it I think Hunter will like is the Texans that are on that list. I mean, Texas Tech, TCU, Texas A&M, and then you guys. And so, you have Power 5 schools and a mid-major out of the Missouri Valley. How proud are you to be mentioned on that list of victories with, Texas Tech, with Coach Tadlock, with TCU, with Texas A&M, and then you guys? And you play them every year, and they play you. How nice is that Texas caliber of baseball over the last, we're talking about 15 years of success?
Yeah, and I think that's a huge part of our success, is just the region that we're in and the programs that you compete against. You got to play the best to be the best, and that's a huge advantage we have, is just within 3 hours of us. I mean, you look at our midweek games. Every single midweek, we have the opportunity to play a top 25 program, and that's just going to elevate your own baseball. And you nailed it. Talking about the Texas Techs, the TCUs, A&M, Oklahoma State. Like, when you're playing them, it's going to keep you sharp, and you're going to make sure you're prepared at the highest level. And it does give us a lot of pride to be named in the same category as them, but at the same time, we almost view ourselves as, I know, quote unquote, we are a mid-major, but we don't view ourselves that way. Like, we feel like we've kind of thrown that out, and there's not mid-major Power 5, there's top 25. And that's what we feel our program is.
What a great answer. We'll end it there. Happy holidays to you and your family. Have a blessed time at home with your sons and your wife, and enjoy an amazing 2023 season. Thanks for connecting with Hunter and I. We really appreciate it.
No, thank you. I really enjoyed it.
Dan Heefner. We'll stop there. We'll go from Dallas Baptist to Iowa when we come back on Perfect Game College Baseball on Perfect Game TV. So we found something out, by the way, when we wrapped up our last interview, that our last guest, Coach Heefner, owes an awful lot to our next guest, Rick Heller. And Rick joins us now. So we didn't know we'd be pairing you guys together on this show. And so he had amazing things to say about you, Rick. Thanks for hanging out with us, by the way. Happy holidays. But let's start with Heath. Pretty ironic that that's the show, right? Kind of a mentor and a mentee and two really successful coaches. But what do you got for us on Heath?
Oh, man. I mean, Heath came to me when he was really young, just out of college, and was done hitting a bunch of home runs at his college. And he had been at Northern Iowa before I got there. Then he transferred out, and then I came in, and he wanted to come back and do his grad work with us. And man, great decision to let him do that. I mean, it was really evident that Heath was going to be special early on. And then, crazy thing that you may, ask me about, later is that that's where we met Robin Lund that year too. And Robin had just been hired as a professor. So Dan and Coach Lund hit it off really well. And so those two were, part of our staff way back in whenever it was, 2002 or so. I think it was about that time. But then Dan and I have been really close since, and I'm more the mentee now with him. He's so good, so he's so smart and just does a fantastic job. But we talk anytime I have any questions on anything going on hitting wise. Dan's the first guy I call, and he bounces a lot of stuff off of me, and then I think both of us are really culture driven guys, and bounce a lot of questions that way off each other as well. And we both agreed the last time that we played that we weren't playing anymore. And then I tried to get him to come to Iowa City and play, but he wouldn't do that.
That's interesting.
His family's still in town, so I say, hey, you want a home game? Just let me know.
Come on
we
down
ended up having to go down there to their launching pad. They beat the hell out of us for a weekend, and then I said, I'm never playing them again.
I mean, that's two amazing, coaches that you've sent off. Lund just headed to the Tigers, and man, has he done an amazing job. Iowa, you were fourth in the nation in ERA. Just incredible pitching seasons over and over again. The development has been incredible. Can you talk a little bit about what Lund meant to Iowa, to you, to the pitching staffs, and what you learned as far as pitching development and why it's so good at Iowa?
The pitching development, it started day one, and when we got here, I hired Scott Brickman, and Scott was the head coach at Belmont Abbey, Division II down in North Carolina, and he had been with me at Northern Iowa, and when they dropped the program, he got that job before I got the Indiana State job. And so Scott and I were able to work together again, and it's just been philosophically the places that I was at early in my career. You weren't necessarily getting the first pick at recess on the recruiting side, and it didn't take me very long in 1988 to realize that if we weren't the best at development, that was going to have to be where we hung our hat. And so it's always been philosophically something that was important to me, and something that we wanted to try to be on the cutting edge. And when Scott started the ball rolling here, and then when he moved on, Desi Druschel was in our program, and Desi's phenomenal, and he stepped in, was the pitching coach, and then the Yankees stole him from me, and now he's in the dugout with the Yankees. He was in the big league dugout this past year, and where Desi had taken us, I didn't have a lot of guys on my short list at that time that I knew could keep us there. And then Tom Gorzolani, former major league pitcher, Tom always trained with us in the off season. He lives in Iowa City, and so was good friends with Tom, and Tom had just retired. And so I called Tom. I'm like, hey, can you bail me out and be the pitching coach this year? Because Desi got that job literally 2 weeks before the guys came back in January. And then we lost Joe Migliaccio was our hitting coach. The Yankees took him too. So Joe and Desi both left 2 weeks before the season started, and I was in a tough spot. And Tom's like, yeah, I knew Tom wanted to try to get into coaching professionally, but and he was still toying with maybe even trying to pitch another year. And thank goodness Tom helped us out, and he did a fantastic job getting us through that spring. But I also was able to hire Robin Lund, and Robin and I had been friends since the early 2000s when Heath was there, and he'd always been a hitting guy. And he was our hitting coach that year, and he's an outstanding hitting guy. But I told him, I said, listen, Robin, if Gorzolani, doesn't want to do this long term and he wants to go into pro ball, I'm seriously thinking about having you be the pitching coach. And he looked at me and he's like, what? Because he had never been a pitching guy. And I said, you don't know it yet, but your skill set is absolutely perfect for what's going on in the pitching world with his biomechanics background, exercise science, and movement. He's an expert in movement and just super smart guy and understands all the analytics. And so that's what happened. Tom's now going to be the AA pitching coach for the Diamondbacks this year, and he went on to pro ball. And Robin became our pitching coach and went out, and he just killed it that summer. He went out and spent time with a lot of minor league pitching coaches, spent 2 or 3 days with them. And same thing with some good college pitching coaches that were friends of ours, and kind of got Robin acclimated. And then he just dove into the books, and he had some there was a learning curve with the on-field stuff and the game day management, but it didn't take him long. And here we are, 4 years later, and boom, he goes right to the big leagues. Pretty incredible story, really.
Yeah, that's absolutely incredible story. And that gets me fired up because I love that. Diving into the biomechanics, reading the books, and like being on the cutting edge. And, Dan was talking about how you're the ultimate growth mindset. You're the ultimate connector, and seeing that talent in a coach. Man, what a wonderful story, Rick. And speaking of the development, and one of your great pitchers, your top pitchers, went out to the Cape Cod this summer and brought in another big arm, a friend, and talked about how well things were going. Can you discuss a little bit about Legendberg and Valker's relationship this summer, how they look this fall? And I thought that was a pretty cool story.
Yeah, it's a good story. Ty's really the only experienced guy we have back on this staff. We got pounded by the draft the last 2 years. And then Ty went, he was our Sunday guy last year, had a really solid first year in the rotation. He really fits the growth mindset too. I mean, he loves the development side, but he's not the guy that goes crazy with it, but he understands all of it, and he's really able to use it. And that's in large part thanks to Robin. But so Ty goes out to the Cape, has a good summer, and we were looking to fill some spots on the rotation out of the transfer portal, wherever we could find guys. And he became good friends with Zach Volker, and Zach was in the portal. And Zach told us that he was looking for all the stuff that we were talking about, that we just talked about with the pitching coaches. And it was just a perfect fit, and he and Ty hit it off really well. And, the rest is history. We were able to get Zach in here, and he's doing a great job, and he's really, he's made steady progress. He was really good when he got here, and he's really, improved his arsenal and his efficiency on things, and he's moving better, and I think he's in a really good place heading into the off season.
Your fingerprints all over this program. You've got a long-term extension to be the coach of this program. I think most exciting, though, is you've done a lot of fundraising. You've plugged into the community, and you guys are going to put the shovel in the ground at some point in 2023 for a brand new facility. As you forecast out, tell us everything you'd like to about that facility.
Yeah, it's been a long process. We were able to get some things done right away for the playing field. My plan was like a 3-phase process where we wanted to take care of the players first. So we got the field turf, cleaned up what we could on the field, dugouts, padded wall, scoreboard, video board, and all the bullpen area and batting cages. And so we went to work on that. That took about 3 years. And then, we went to work on trying to finish it off with the actual bowl. We're not going to move the stadium. It's going to be the same location. We really like our spot. We're kind of nestled in right between Kinnick Stadium and Carver Hawkeye Arena. And so the location's outstanding. And then we practice in the indoor football building, which is literally right behind our field. You can walk, it's only like 40 yards. So, utilizing that, the field, and then where our cages are, it's just a little triangle that works great in the spring. So we're keeping it in the same spot. It's not easy to raise that kind of money, especially in a state like Iowa, where you don't have a ton of major cities, and a lot of times you're hitting the same generous people up over and over again. But we've got some good help in our foundation, and Scott Brickman moved to the foundation from my pitching coach, and he wanted to spend more time with his young family. And so Scott got the ball rolling together. He and I got it rolling. And then now John Dwyer is my number one helper in the foundation. And we really had a good year, past year and a half. has really taken hold, and it looks like we're going to get it done. There's still a few hoops we have to jump through with the Board of Regents and some things this spring, but even if it wouldn't happen right away, this spring is happening soon for sure. And we're talking about, a 3,000 seat chair back, with some boxes and a really, really nice state of the art press box and architecture on the roof that's going to look really nice, and a beautiful entryway that you're going to see from the road when you come up the hill, heading up between Carver and the baseball field. And, it's going to be beautiful.
So my final question for you, I know Hunter might have another one or two, but is with going back to your Big Ten coaches meeting last year when the season all came to an end, and it was with intent that you guys got together. Your commissioner came, which is rare, right?
Yep.
And USC, UCLA is in the mix in the future. We all know that story. But you guys really with intent got together and said, what happened to us? Maybe there were more us's, meaning Iowa, over the last few years. We want to make sure that doesn't happen again. So let's make a positive out of a negative for our Iowa program. Kind of explain the thought process on making sure that you guys aren't on the outside looking in, which kind of was an injustice for sure. But you guys got to work on trying to make sure that changes in the future.
Yeah, we got together as a group. I mean, we all felt slighted, especially this past year with ourselves and Rutgers feeling like our resume was deserving of getting in the tournament. And then going back to the year Michigan played for the national championship, the league got 5 teams in that year. We were getting 4 and 5 in back then. The league winning percentage, RPI stuff was all about the same. And we had a rep on the committee back then, and then all of a sudden we don't have a voice from the Big Ten on the selection committee, and then we're getting 2 teams, or we're getting barely 2 teams. And I guess all of us were just trying to find out what we could do to try to stop this from happening again. Was it was it a slight because during COVID our league didn't do exactly what everybody else wanted us to do, which none of the coaches had it or the players had anything to do with. And then, we all felt slighted in the year after COVID when we were forced to play the Big Ten only schedule. But we're talking 44 Big Ten games that all counted in league play. And, that's a pretty tough schedule. We weren't playing any, patsies midweek here and there. So to me, that didn't make any sense. The logic behind us not playing a tough schedule that year, but we kind of had to wear it just because that's what we heard was the issue, and then we were hoping that it was all put under the rug and that we were going to get a fair shot this year, but it didn't appear that way to us. So I guess a lot of talks about what we can do ourselves. I mean, not just complaining. What can we do? How can we schedule better? How can we schedule more intelligently? How can we do this? How can we do that? What can we do with our conference tournament? What are we going to do when UCLA and USC get into the league, which I think is going to be great for the Big Ten? And just hearing from our commissioner and hearing from our ADs as a group that they were bothered by this, I think is a big first step. Just knowing that, they realized that, at least in our opinion, we were slighted last year in our league. And I think that's the first step to, just making sure that those guys are all aware of it, and anything they can do in their circles and their committees that they are on, and talk to people on the committee to make sure that this doesn't happen again. And then I think it's pretty evident that we need to get somebody on that committee.
I mean, you have an unbelievable case. I mean, 36-19, fourth in the nation in ERA, and I don't care who you are. If you're fourth in the nation in ERA, you have a chance to win the whole thing. If you can pitch, you can win. That is definitely painful.
We had won 8 out of 9 series down the stretch and won 3 games in the conference tournament. And you hear the stuff on Twitter. Well, Iowa needs to win this series. They're in if they win this series. Well, they're in if they win this series. If they lose this series, they're out. And then we just kept winning. And there wasn't one time where we stubbed our toe and they could say, "Well, you blew 2 out of 3 in this series." And then I'm watching other leagues where teams lost 7 out of 9 series and down the stretch and got in the tournament, and I know a lot of people like to just look at the RPI, but we were always told that the RPI is just one of the pieces to the puzzle, and that it's pretty apparent that if you're from the north and you have to travel the first 4 weeks on the road because of the weather, the RPI situation is wacky. I mean, it's not fair. It's not a fair judge of who's good and who's not good. When we all know those first 4 weeks when the Southern schools are beating up on people at home and guys who haven't been on a real field yet. I mean, that's why we thought the human element to the committee always helped the Big Ten. If you looked at teams that were winning down the stretch and winning 7, 8, 9 series in a row, that's just unfortunately, sorry about that.
Got to move around.
Yeah, we got the green lights here, so they go out on you every once in a while. But anyway, you know what I'm saying. I mean, we just felt like that common sense played in the room with that committee when you look at the RPI, and if our league is forced to have an RPI in the 20s and the 30s, like a lot of the SEC and the schools in the South are going to have because of the amount of games they win in those first 4 weeks or first 3 weeks when teams are coming to them. I mean, it's going to be difficult to ever have 4 or 5 teams because it just doesn't work that way.
Yeah, makes a good point. I'm going to bring it back. I had quite a few questions. I'm excited about this year's team, but I guess if I got to pick one of the questions that I had for you for me to wrap this up, it would be let's hear a little bit about Anthony Keaton. Apparently, I was reading that he was going to pitch for you. Kind of the Shohei Ohtani of the NCAA. What a year out of the DH spot, and just absolutely incredible talent. How's he looking this fall? Talk about his season last year, and just tell us a little bit about this extraordinary talent.
Yeah. Good story. Came from Georgia, walked on, actually, all the way from Georgia, and has had some injuries his first year. Had to redshirt, so last year was his first full season as a redshirt freshman, and he was the Big Ten Freshman of the Year. He ended up playing right field for us more out of necessity last season, and it kind of limited his innings on the mound. The pitching was so good, it was like, okay, let's just keep this rolling. We're going to really use Keaton in a limited role this year on the mound, and then he just lit it up offensively. I mean, he's one of the better bats, in the Big Ten and in the country. Put up big time numbers last season. Solid in the clutch. Really good with 2 strikes. Just a great hitter, and he was one of those guys that's kind of the golden ticket. He's the draft eligible sophomore, so he was able to kind of play the field with the draft. Had some opportunities. Had he wanted to take the money they were offering, decided to bet on himself and come back to school, which was great to see. And then a big part of that, Hunter, was what you hit on the pitching side, is that we knew, and Keaton knows, he's a legitimate arm as well, and really feeling like if he can go out and maybe be in the rotation, maybe he's a Sunday guy this year, or even if he's got a bigger role out of the bullpen, he's not going to have to play in the outfield this season with the guys we have in, and we've got a really great situation. We got like 3 center fielders for the first time in 6 or 7 years, so our outfield is going to be really solid, and Keaton will either play first base or DH, and that makes it much more conducive for him, pitching a lot more innings. And it also gives him, I think he's going to go into pro ball as a hitter, but it's nice to have that in the back pocket that maybe AA things aren't going so good. Boom, put the guy, give him a chance, second shot on the mound. And I think after all the scouts see him go through our season this year on the mound, I think that's what will happen. So pretty pumped up about what Keaton's going to bring to us this year, both with the bat and on the mound.
Merry Christmas, Rick. Thank you so much for hanging out with Hunter and I. We really appreciate it.
Yeah, thanks, guys. Really appreciate you having me on. Good to see everybody.
He called him the mentor, then he called himself the mentee. Either way, we want to thank Rick. We also want to thank Coach Dan Heefner for joining as they worked together earlier in their careers. Happy holidays on behalf of Hunter and I. Have a good, safe time with family, friends, and loved ones. And and enjoy baseball whenever you want to find it in the cold out there. This is Perfect Game College Baseball. We'll see you soon.